So last week's story was about Moses and how Moses got these special rules from God. And sometimes when we think of rules, we only think about things that we can't do. Oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. And how we should take rules and turn them around and look at them as opportunities. What do they let us do? If we don't lie to people, does that let us build good relationships with them? We have the opportunity to tell them the truth and to speak good things into their life. And that's going to tie in a little later to our story today, the ability to speak to each other and to share things with each other. But anyways, the people that Moses was leading, so they got these rules and they're on their journey. And a lot of things happen along the way. There's our Israelites, and they're about ready to go in the promised land, but there's a problem. They got to get by that. So this is our story. Here, I'll stay on the picture so you can see it. After Moses died, God gave his people a new leader. His name was Joshua, which means the Lord saves. Joshua was going to lead God's people into the special land God had promised to give them. By this time, God's people had been wandering around in that baking desert for 40 years. So you can imagine how sick they were of sand and anything yellow and tense and walking and being hot. And how happy they were to reach the edge of the desert and see their beautiful new home right there in front of them. All cool and green and lovely. But there was only one problem: Jericho. Jericho was a city, but it wasn't just any old city, it was a fortress, and it stopped anyone from getting into the land. The people looked at Jericho, at the giant, big, scary walls all around it, at the tall, towering ramparts, at the heavy iron gate swung shut, and they looked at each other. What would they do? No one knew. God knew, and God told Joshua what to do. But Joshua must have looked very surprised, because it was an odd battle plan indeed, as we'll soon find out. Then God made his people a promise. I will always be with you, and I will never, ever leave you. If you do what I say, your lives in the new land will be happy, and everything will go well. So Joshua gathered his army together. They had their swords and spears and shields. They were ready to fight. But the plan wasn't about fighting. It was about trusting and doing what God said. Joshua's army went marching around the city day after day. They're too scared to fight, the people of Jericho said. But they were wrong. God's people weren't scared. They were waiting for God to tell them what to do next. On the seventh day, God told his people to march around the city not once, but 7 times. Then God told everyone to make as much noise as they could. Has anyone ever told you to make as much noise as you possibly can? Well, imagine that noise and add 39,999 other people making that noise too, and you get the idea. Ear-splitting. And as it turned out, stone-splitting too, because the huge, strong walls of Jericho just crumbled to the ground as if they were made of sand. Jericho vanished in a great cloud of dust. So it was that God's people entered their new home. And they didn't have to fight to get in. They only had to walk. Joshua said, God has brought you here safely. Now will you do what he says? Everyone said, we promise. Only God can make your heart happy, Joshua said. So don't pray to pretend gods. No, they said, never. But I'm afraid they didn't keep their promise. They didn't do what God said, and many years later, just as God warned them, things would go badly for his people. They would lose their home. Enemies would capture them and take them off as slaves. And God's people would scatter into many different lands. But God's plan was still working. One day he would give his people another leader and another home. But this home, no one could ever take of them. So of course that's talking about Jesus much, much later. Down the road, And when I thought about this story, what really drew me was this idea of all these people marching around this city together, making this noise, and thinking about what powerful things we can do when we come together and we obey God's rules and we celebrate together, celebrate the good things He has given us. And that's hard right now, and we have to do it differently. So I began thinking, how can we, as the kids of our church, and maybe someday we get the adults to participate in this too, how can we come together right now? Because we can't see each other on Sunday morning, and I drop off Sunday school papers for each of you, but how do you guys get to spend time with each other? So I've been doing some classes over this summer, and one of the classes I've been doing is learning how to make different types of books, crafts with kids. So this is a cool one. And these are all ones we'll probably do in the future in Sunday school. This is the two sides of me. The side I think the world wants me to be, and the side I want to be. And then you can open it up. You can write a poem about yourself. And you can just put stickers in it. Kind of reminders of how to be the person that God made you to be, not who the world wants you to be. And another book I made was this little book about the civil rights in the United States. And these little books are called zines. And zines are little books you can make that talk about different social issues, so different things that have happened in the world, both in the past or in the present. And I thought, oh, you could write little prayers in them. So I started writing little prayers, making little collages. So if I were a history teacher, I could do something like this, or we could do this at Lego Club as a little prayer book. Just a normal book here like this, that you tie together with string. Me and Mike had some doodles in here of little mythical creatures we did as part of a workshop. That's a little doodle book. And here's one that's got a pencil working as the binding, and you can flip through it. And it's just a little book bound by rubber bands. So that was a really fun workshop I did this summer. So I thought, oh, what if I make a book? And I get you all to add a page, and then I'll collect the pages and I'll photocopy them. And you guys can make a little book just to encourage each other. So I'm going to give you a picture of a horn to remind you of the Israelites blowing their horn. There's your horn. And I want you to decorate your horn and write little notes of encouragement to the other kids at our church, or draw a picture of what you're doing this summer. Treat it kind of like a postcard. If you could be at church this Sunday or next Sunday, what would you say happened last week? What would you be happy about? What are you worried about? What's making you happy right now? What's making you feel like God loves you, like the world is an okay place? Or what's encouraging you that even though things are difficult right now, we're going to get through them? So I'm challenging you to color your horn and then give it back to me. I'm going to collect them next Sunday. And then I'm going to turn them into a book for you guys. And I'll photocopy them, and you can each have a copy. And it'll be like us blowing our trumpets together but apart. And then maybe Pastor Matthew would call this a labyrinth, but there's a fun little shofar. That's a type of trumpet they were probably blowing as they walked around the walls. So we hope you guys have a good week, and I hope you guys take up my little craft challenge.